Welcome to another episode of Talking with WIT Kevin and Son, where we showcase people you should know. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Now, our mission is very simple. Through our stories, we want to uplift through the power of your voice, share stories and experience and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple: hope, helping other people every single day. Now, this is a very special show. We're going to talk about the secrets to people's success. So, my next guest, I'm going to say this very slowly, and I want you to listen. So, whatever your objectives are, successful people create a framework around their day to day lives that enhances their lives. And sometimes, like my guest today, they pour into others. This podcast will reveal the secrets of a highly effective life. Today's guest will share not only his story with you, but some simple, doable steps of how to turn bad habits into good, mastering small behaviors through life experience with big outcomes. Our guest will also share with you how to achieve your most wildest dreams. Connect the dots with some of the best breweries across the East Coast and throughout the nation. I think there's about 10,000 of them. And if you stay around long enough, we'll tell you and invite you to go on a tour with us of some of the best beer makers on the planet through his app. Let me welcome entrepreneur, author, co-host to one of my Sunday shows, Sunday Motivations with Kevin and Friends, developer, motivational speaker, and rapidly evolving craft beer maker, Mr. Curt Battles. How you doing, young brother?
I'm good, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
No, thank you for allowing me to have you on this show. Now, the hard part about having a personal friend on here is to come up with a conversation that I haven't already heard. So, I was thinking today and I was looking back and I started making myself some notes. I said, okay, what do we talk about? I can talk about your career. And I said, no, I don't want to talk about that because uh, we've already seen that. We already know about your career. We want to know how you got interested in financial strategies and whatever. And I said, no, I heard you talk about that on another podcast. What about the opportunities you had during your corporate career? I'm going, no, I don't want to bore my listeners with all that stuff and how we did this and our success or whatever. But the one question that everyone always asks, what would the Curtis now say to the younger Curtis Battles? And I said, knowing you would probably say, I know everything, just leave me alone. So this is what I'm going to ask. Okay. I know you are a seasoned strategist. You have invented an app that has created a connection with all the breweries across the country. But be it the Curtis Battles that is sitting here today and the Curtis Battles that would have been sitting here if I had done this 25, 40 years ago. I want to ask you, what was the worst piece of advice that has ever been given to you? That's how I want to start the show.
Well, Kevin, I think in looking back, there's probably been quite a few bad pieces of advice that have been put out as if they're going to help you.
Hmm.
Um, I think one of the things as I look back is people saying, oh, I wouldn't go for that because you don't have the skills, you don't have the experience. Oh, you don't know that industry. There would be this sort of instead of a let's lift you up and help you be exposed to what the thing is that you need to do to be successful. There's too much of that negativity, and I try to keep that out of my day-to-day activities. And when I talk to people, I try to always be you can do this and you can do it any way you want and you can do it yesterday. You just have to put your mind around it and focus on going forward.
Now, I've interviewed a lot of people and I've talked to a lot of people about their success. And one of the things I've learned is that long before they became an official entrepreneur, they were many entrepreneurs. Um, where did your entrepreneurial spirit ship start?
All right. So I'm going to go way back. This is when I would be in elementary school growing up in North Jersey. And so I actually had a paper route. That was when the local paper was the Bergen Record. I had what was in the day the smooth bicycle of Schwinn Typhoon with metal baskets on the back. And I would go out and go to the depot where you would pick up the newspapers in the afternoon and then, carry them around and deliver. So what I did is I started with one route and then I was so efficient, I ended up with the second one. So I had the biggest route in that area. I probably had 75 customers on a daily basis that I was delivering newspapers to. And then what would happen is on Sundays is just like the New York Times is this huge thing with all the ads and all the magazines. There would be the comics and everything else, and it was too much to be able to go on the bicycle. So I engaged my parents in our old station wagon to drive me around. And I ran out of the station wagon, I jumped and I dropped off the paper and came back and all that. And so the entrepreneurial piece became I had the idea, but I was able to convince them at a very low entry cost to be able to help me take this to the next level.
So you gave your parents a cut of the business?
No, well, you see, but the best part is they got a chance to spend more quality time with me, even if it was at 7 in the morning on a Sunday.
What was the worst job you've ever had?
The word, I'm just thinking for you. I don't have a whole lot of bad jobs.
Mhm.
Um, Part of my experience has been in the hospitality space. So I was at one point a night clerk for a hotel that was, 20 minutes away from me. And so what was unique was the clientele that came in sometimes. So you'd see an
Mhm.
old man come in with this young woman, and he'd say, "Well, what is your name?" Virginia Pippolini. Really? Okay. And this is your niece. And so all the crazy things that you can think of that can happen in the middle of the night of people running in, forgetting where they're going, don't have a room. You've run out of rooms because you've sold out the hotel and have to send them someplace else. That was the hardest part. It wasn't that you wanted to always give great customer service, but sometimes it was just challenging in that kind of an environment.
And you were educated at which university?
So I went to Cornell undergrad for hotel administration. Um, I worked for a couple big companies that the audience has probably heard of. One is Disney. I spent a summer there as what they called us 90-day wonders because we were summer supervisors, and I ran the restaurant that was looked out over the castle. That was a fast food one right there. I also have worked for Pepsi along the way, but my time in the hotel business. I was at a private condominium club resort with golf. Too bad Tiger Woods wasn't around then because I might actually be able to golf today rather than just swing the clubs at the air. And then I also worked for what is now Sky Chefs Lufthansa. That is the airline catering folks. So I was a work study program. I was at an airport in Cincinnati. I loaded planes. I did financial analysis. I helped understand how a bakery operation works for them doing time and motion study. I had a chance to do a broad range of things, but it was all around different aspects of the hospitality business, whether it was how we account for it, how we do customer service, what are the newest and greatest things that are coming along, where's technology can go into it. I've always been interested in that element.
Now, I'm always curious because I speak to a lot of young men and women in areas that grew up like I did, and people that look like you and I, melanated people, or what they come I don't know what they call them anymore. In my neighborhood, we grew up poor. Now they have another name attached to it. But growing up, and I think we both grew up in the same era, we experienced these challenges just based on the days that we showed up. There had to be someone, it could be mom, dad, could be your brothers or sisters, that provided hope for you, provided an opportunity for you to believe that the opportunity was going to be fair in your favor. Because even though there was a system, and we still believe that there's a system in place that pigeonholes some of us, that shackles us to their dream, and they hold the key to releasing us from opportunities where our dream can thrive and flourish. Who's that person that had your ear, that had your heart, that showed you that the opportunity for you to be who you are today, they were the gatekeeper to your future? Who is that person? We call them mentors or coaches.
Yeah. So I had a couple different ones, but the one that comes to mind most is my godfather. His name is Duncan Walton, and he was a professor, a psychologist, um, down at Rutgers University. He spent years there, but each summer we would get together, the family. So our dads grew up together in Jersey City. Uh, I have the two eldest sons, myself and Brian, are the second generation, and then we have daughters that are the third generation. So for us, we actually went and vacationed on Martha's Vineyard before it became all two. And everybody would say there, we would live in Oak Bluffs, it would be the little house. And it's those conversations you had just sitting around out on the back deck, doing a little barbecuing, where he talks about you can be anything you want to be. What you just have to do is put your mind to it. But don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't be a superstar, and don't let anybody ever tell you that there is somehow you are diminished. And that, I think, was one of the key first outside the family mentoring relationships. I kept up with Duncan all that time. He just passed away last year at the ripe old age of 92 or 93. And so we always had a good relationship. Even if we didn't talk in a while, it's like it was an old time just sitting down, shooting what's going on. I remember a couple times we went up there as he sort of retired up that way. So Brian and I went and we'd be sitting down at the fish restaurant on the water, talking about what has happened with the family and what's the next step in our lives. So he was that mentor factor early on.
Well, I want to say my condolences for losing someone that was inspirational to you. And we thank you for the gift that he has given us to have you not only on one of my podcasts, but to be blessed with your presence on this interview. But I also want to ask you today, because this is a question that's asked a lot of times. When is it time to say enough is enough? To become that entrepreneur that you always wanted to be? How do you create a conversation, and what advice would you give to someone that is at that point that keeps saying that, it's time for me to leave this job, but they never leave? How do you get someone that struggles with the failure to launch to go ahead and start theirs? What advice would you give them?
So there are a couple things that come to mind, Kevin. Um, as I've looked back on my career and figured it out, so there was a point when I was in the real estate space. And so two of my big projects are Grand Central Terminal redevelopment and World Trade Center post 9/11. So it was very involved. You had lots going on. You're dealing with very high level people, lots of money kind of thing. But it was at the point where you're saying, this is all great and I love it, but I am not getting paid enough for all this work that you folks are having me do. And there must be another way that I can find satisfaction and have something that would be my own that will help build both be emotionally, intellectually, and financially beneficial for the family down the road. And I think the way a lot of folks get started, and my suggestion is you just come up with a few side hustles. So that side hustle could be, hey, I can do merchandise, t-shirts, and have it drop shipped. So I never actually have to have a warehouse that has all these in it. And I've come up with this slogan. I can come up with things I can do in the real estate space. I can do things, especially now with AI now. There's a lot of ways to create small businesses that don't necessarily take a lot of capital. And it's sort of putting your toes in the water and figuring out what you do know and what you don't know. I think the other piece is it's always beneficial to have another voice that's in the room with you. So your best buddy your friend over here, that you two can think through it together, because two or three brains will be much more effective in thinking through those elements than just the one. But it gives you a way to get out there without feeling I've just jumped completely off the diving board into the deep end and I don't know how to swim.
Now, most people listening to you, when I hear someone says I went to Cornell University, especially a person that looks like us, I'm going, how the hell did you get into Cornell University back in the day? You must have been a straight A student in order to get into Cornell. Am I correct, or I'm talking out the side of my face?
So I was not a straight A student, but I went to a high school in New Jersey that was one of the top in the state, all public school for me. Um, I had the It wasn't just about the grade on the paper. It is what you learned from the classes and the people you were in. And some of the most enjoyable classes were things that were outside of the spectrum. So I was a editor of the school newspaper. I was the treasurer of the student congress. I had to get up in front of, and in my high school, there were about 2,000 students, and there were only about 15 of us that were students of color. So I clearly stood out in so many ways. And because I had the ability early on to connect with people on a more actual relationship level, not just oh, you're that black guy over there. I always found a way to know that I knew the jocks, I knew the cheerleaders, I knew the nerds. I could sort of transform across that, and I think that's what helped a lot in doing that. So yes, it was always competitive. I was always up there. I had good grades, but I wasn't a straight A student.
And the reason why I ask that, because I speak and share information to high schoolers and college age students. And most people believe when they don't believe when I tell them that 17% of the CEOs that run Fortune 500 companies were D and C students.
Hmm?
Not all your summa cum laudes and whatever are running operations. Most of them are just great employees. They're part of that 80%, not the 20% of
Yeah.
people such as yourself as entrepreneurs. Now, before I go into your present day career, I want to lead in with the second half of this show to talk about your book. And then we'll talk about the breweries and how you connected and created BAT, the app. We'll talk about that. But the first thing I want is, before we do a deep dive into your success today, is how do people get in touch with you?
So Kevin, thank you for that so much. Uh, you can see the name of my business is Craft Beer Insights, and our website is www.craftbeerinsights.com. You can also reach me by email, Curt, C-U-R-T, at CRAFTBERINSIGHTS.com. That's the Curt at craftbeerinsights.com. And you can also reach out directly by phone, 203-918-7780. I welcome people to come and look at the website because it gives you a sense of what we'll talk about in a few minutes, my unique vision for this industry and why I think it's changing and there's so many opportunities. But I also do advisory work. I help small businesses just getting up and running, figuring it out, whether it's funding, whether it's marketing, whether it's branding, across a whole spectrum. And I've got access to lots of other folks in my network that can really make a difference for folks.
All right, all right. So, people, you know how to get in touch with him. I'm going to give you some strong advice. If you take down his number, he is not a loan officer. So, if you're going through some stuff and whatever, this is not the phone call you need to make in order to have some help. He will sympathize with you. He will give you some great advice. He will tell you to pull up your pants above your waistline and go out and do the work, because we both know, um, in order to have some good times, you got to go through a lot of bad times. All right. And that's what makes good times possible. So you got a book. All right. Now, unfortunately, I learned about your book after doing some research on you, and I didn't have an opportunity to read it. But The Secrets to Building a Successful Craft Beer. I think that's the book. Am I right?
Yeah, so it's occupation fermentation, the
Okay.
secrets to building a successful craft beer business. So if you think about people who they started as home brewers. So I was in my garage. I got a kit originally. It had everything in it, and I said, "Boy, this is the most fun ever. I love doing this stuff. How could I make this into a passion and a business for myself?" There's a point when they probably have been kicked out of the house, out of the kitchen by their wives or their other halves, and so with 10,000 plus breweries out there, I don't ever teach people how to make beer. I teach them how to run a profitable business. So the book does the following. It tells you a little bit about what is the history of beer, how it's grown up over time, what happened during Prohibition, how it's made, what kind of equipment you need to do this, how you can figure out how to size it for the size business that you're looking to do. What else is there? What kind of money you need, where the money might be able to come from, and most importantly, sort of why is it regulated the way it is? Because every state is a little bit has different laws that make it much more complicated. So the whole approach behind my business and my business model is really to be that resource that helps people figure out what they need to do as they are thinking about going in this business. So I say, before you spend $300,000 on your business, spend $30. It's like craft beer for dummies, but we don't call it that. And we try to make it a little light and interesting so that it's a fun read. And what it also has done for me, it's given me authority in the space. So when I go out and I say to somebody, "Hey, do you need a speaker for your conference? Would you like somebody to come in and talk about this particular area or this particular interest?" They said, "By the way, I'm an author. You can get my book on Amazon." It just carries a lot of positive weight for folks in saying, "Yeah, I really want to do that, and you're somebody I want to at least consider for that opportunity."
My listeners probably can understand why you are one of these people you should know. I'm probably the only podcaster that picked a common subject that's not a lot of profit in. The unsung heroes, the people we need to know every single day that are doing great things in the community. Part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this app that you have is because I learned through you, through private conversation, that there is a large group of minority owned businesses that are connected to this title that we're talking about. And I had just made a donation to a friend that was raising money for the loss of their child. And they were part of what they call a bar crawl. And
Hmm.
this is held all up and down the East Coast. And
Yep.
I said, wouldn't it be nice if we can connect the dots to our businesses and for us to support our business, right? Comments, talk about, post videos, let people know, and make it part of your travels. I know I'm a foodie, so every time I look on the food channel, I travel to a city, I support whatever bar, restaurant, or whatever. I don't drink, but I've had two beers in my lifetime. But I'm looking forward to being on a tour with you to indulge in some of these in order to support some of these craft makers, beer makers, and be able to tell their story. So I'm hoping that if you are a minority owned business and you are a brewery and you want to come in and talk about your story, how to get started, some of the things that you've have overcome. I'll bring Curt on as my co-host, and we can sit there and have these conversations, and he can give you firsthand advice. But I would say before you call, buy his book. And where can your book be found?
So you can find it on Amazon. Um, just go in and put in occupation fermentation and it will pop up.
All right. So, Curt, quick question. Purpose and motivation. What are those?
So purpose for me is to make a difference in the world, whether that is mentoring young folks, whether that is growing a business, whether that is supporting my family. Um, uh, in I want it to be better than when I arrived, and I want to for folks to be able to look back and say, yeah, he was a guy that really did his best to go about that. My motivation, I think, is I want to learn things new every day. So I'm always looking for what is the next opportunity? Where is there another challenge? What else can I do to get better? And how can I share that with folks that I know? I try very hard when I meet people to connect the dots, as you said. So it's you, Kevin, and I've got another friend who is a photographer. I think that you guys have something in common. I'll do an introduction and then let you guys go about your business and figure out whether that made sense and it would be helpful. But I tend to be able to see a broader view of the world and figure out what the ebbs and flows of the energy going through it without being too metaphysical. But just being able to say, I think these folks, there will make a difference. And I do it for folks all over the place. What I would say to some of the folks in the audience, it's critical that you have a role model. It's critical that you have mentors in your place, in your space. Networking is about helping the person you're talking to. It's not about them getting you the next job. The more that you give, the more that you share, it all comes back to you two, three times over because they'll say, "Hey, that was a great guy. I had a great conversation, really made a lot of sense, really helped me. Can you tell me about this?" Um, so that's, I don't know if I completely answered your question, but that is the two pieces that come to mind for me.
No, that was beautiful. 90% of most self-starters fail and go back into the workplace or the workspace. What advice or what reason you can give to our listeners as to why people fail on something they've started? And is the best advice to go back into the workplace and wait for the gold watch that doesn't exist or your retirement, collect your social security benefits, or what advice would you give them to an entrepreneur?
So I think for an entrepreneur, you have to have the mindset that I want to fail forward fast. So there is no question when you go out there, there's going to be things that happen that were either beyond your control or just the circumstances changed. And you're going to have to pivot. Whether it's a COVID, um, the COVID has come, and therefore people can't go out to have beverages in public with each other, or it could be just the nature of the industry, the space you're in. You think of when Netflix used to just have discs that you get in the mail and they went and became a streaming service. Well, if you had only stayed with what the business was back then, it would be very different. So I'll just give you an example from this process I've gone through to create the Brewery Adventure Tour app. So for those who are on, um, I was actually out at a conference with my wife. We were out in the Scottsdale area, and I was in the craft beer space already. So every time I go anywhere, I always try to find what are the best local breweries to try out. What I found, it was really difficult. You could go to Google, you could go to Yelp, but one says it's 5 miles to the west, one says it's 15 miles to the north, one says it's 6 miles to the east. I don't, I may not know the area. I don't know whether they're good or bad. I don't know whether they have food or not. I thought that there was a great opportunity to create a desktop and mobile solution that would actually make it fun. So the bad app, as we call it, is all about going out pre-gaming, weekend trips or beercations, as I call them, across the country. All 10,000 breweries are in it, and whenever you look at it, the six closest will pop up. They'll give you food, music, events, promotions. You create your own itinerary. You can share it with friends. You can follow them on social media. And that, so it's a free app, it's a download in the Amazon or Apple store for those folks that are craft beer lovers who just want to go out and hang out with their friends. And then on the brewery side, it's a B2B because each gets their own webpage. They'll be able to put up food, music, events, promotions, whatever's going on. They have comedy night, they have yoga night. And we've also built into it the ability to advertise that you can micro target both people inside the category and people outside. So it could be Adidas, it could be American Express, could be this podcast that wants to be right in that marketplace. And the idea is that we are connecting these folks, and the industry overall is a very collaborative one. So this fits into that very well.
Quick question. What happens to the craft beer maker that's watching this podcast right now and says, I'm not on the app? How do they get in touch with you to get on the app?
So again, they can come to me through our website. So for the app, it's www.breweryadventuretour, which is BREWYADVENTURE.com. And there's a space on it. It lets you see exactly how the app is working, but there's a place where it says if you're a new brewer and you want to, you can click on it and you can enter your information. But you can also reach out to me by telephone, 203 918 7780, and by email, Curt@craftbeerinsights.com.
It's all right. So, CB, and I'm going to call you CB instead of calling you Curtis because in my neighborhood, once you get a nickname, that's like bringing you into the family. You are blood. So I'm going to call you CB. So anyone that's listening to this, he's a personal friend. That's what I call him in real life, instead of Curtis Battles. But um, how can we connect all this? Let's make it some fun. Let's get
Yep.
people traveling from one brewery to another. How do we showcase the minority businesses and tell their story? Any ideas on how we could connect the dots?
So I have actually two. One is I track where the Black brewers are around the country. There are approximately 50 right now. They tend to be in the larger markets such as Chicago, New York, um, down in North Carolina, out in California. And there is a new organization called the National Black Brewers Association. So if you actually go on to their website, you can put in your state, you can click on it, and they have pretty much an updated listing of where they are. So part of it is just to know where these breweries are and define that they may be right around the corner because 80% of the country lives within 10 miles of a craft brewery. So there's a pretty good chance they may be close to you. I think the second part of this is we're trying to make sure all these folks know about each other and do additional education about why um, this is such a great space to be in and why it's so much fun and what all the things that you can do in the craft beer space. You know, whether it's a restaurant that makes beer, whether it's a brewery, just a tasting room where you go in, but it's a great place for community. And since a lot of this, we're all about community, especially among folk of color, this is a great way for people to get together.
So let me put this out there for anyone that is connected, know someone that has their own established brewery or a startup, and you want some love. Like I said, I'm not a drinker. I have a reason that I don't drink, but I did have a beer with a good friend in Lake Placid. Gave me my first beer, and I enjoyed it. I liked it. And what I like to do, Curtis, I like to invite you back on the show. Let's
Happy to
get
do.
someone that's out there and let's talk about the different what are they called? IPAs? Is that what they're
So,
called?
the most popular beer style right now is called the Indian Pale Ale.
Hmm.
Um, and so the reason they call it that is the ships going to India, they would put the beer on from the brewery and it would be fermented by the time it got to India. So they put
Okay.
on the casks and it was for all the people who were uh, craving that beverage from back home. What you now find is, and this is just a point of interest for the audience, there are people who do dark beers like stouts and porters. There are folks that do fruit flavored ones that are often called sours. There's what you think of as the traditional ones, ales and pilsners. So there are probably 400 different beer styles that exist around the world. That every Some are really high in alcohol, some are very light. You can find, even if you're not a beer drinker, you can find something. You say, I never knew that was a beer. And it gives you a chance to be able to hang out with your friends at the same time. So I'd be happy to come back and share it. And seasonal beers like an Oktoberfest or a summer ale, all those things, there's a place for everybody. and everybody can find a place. And that's what I really like about the craft beer space and the things where I have a chance to do things there.
Yeah, let me put this out there. So those of you out there that are craft beer makers, come on Talking with Kevin and Son. Well, and join me and Curtis. Let's go live. We can Zoom from your place to ours, and we can have a couple beers up here. We can talk about it. We can taste it. We can give your company some love. Now, just because I said minority businesses, you know, we are in a space that that we haven't been welcome. So we're going to welcome all beer makers. But if you happen to be a minority beer maker, come on the show. If you happen to be a regular beer maker, come on the show. If you're a good person that's giving back to the community, come on the show. If you're a beer maker that's creating drama and separate people, don't call me. Don't call Curtis. We ain't about that. All right, we're about bringing people together, connecting good people to other people. And remember, his app is BAT app. It's on both. Where can you get it now?
So it's called the Brewery Adventure Tour. It is available on both the Amazon, I'm sorry, on the Apple and the Android store. I also do have an Instagram feed for it called the brewery underscore adventure underscore tour, as you might expect, where you see, and what we do is we try to have it, what goes on, what is a stout, it's much more than just a pretty woman with a beer standing there. It's really about educating folks and for people who want to know more and just to be able to enjoy their experience more. That's what we try to do there.
All right. And this is not on the list of questions, just popped up in my head because
Yep.
every Christmas I look for that one ad. I don't know why they don't do it at a Super Bowl. I love those Clydesdales. I love those dogs. Coke, Pepsi. I don't remember which one does it with the Bears. I love those. And you've abandoned those things. Bring it back because we sit there every single year looking for it. But the independent beer makers and our commercial beer makers, and I will say Budweiser, Coors, and
Yep.
Heineken, and all that. What's that relationship? How do they feel about that? Because independent beer makers are becoming a lot more popular, and the reason why I'm saying that is because when we came out of COVID, first thing I said is that in order for you to market your product, it has to be personal to your community. If there's no connection, you can't just put a celebrity face on there or do what you've been doing and expecting us to follow. You've got to be giving back. So for those big companies out there that are still running those expensive ads, they ain't working. All right. Because in Pennsylvania, we're number 6 in the largest craft beer makers in the country. Number 6, next to New York, next to Delaware, next to Washington, number 6, and growing. And from what you said, there's 10,000 of them, and some of them look just like you and I. So, what do you think the relationship between Big Brother and the startups are right now? Are we making better beer, or should we stay with the commercial brands?
All right. So I will tell you this. So within the craft beer community, they will refer to the Bud and the InBev and the Miller Coors as big beer. So it's like Big Brother looking over you. So they're meant to be relatively bland, relatively uninteresting. And so the craft beer space has evolved because people's tastes have expanded. And they want the freshest, they want it local, they want to be able to, more than anything, have an experience. I want to go and be with my friends. I want to be able to do things. I want to have a nice meal. And just going to the store and getting that beer. And then you saw the backlash last year for Bud Light in
Right.
trying to do an ad with a new influencer that maybe didn't fit most of their demographic. Whereas I think in the craft beer space, everybody is welcome no
Yeah.
matter where you are. I think of folks, the bearded, tattooed person is one of the standards that you'll see, and it's just a style about them. Everybody really wants to figure out and get along. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some open only Thursday through Sunday because it's their little side gig. Other ones, they are trying to figure out and grow to 2, 3, 4 different locations and have distribution across the entire country. So that's what I think distinguishes those two pieces, one from the
Yeah.
other.
And we need to support our local entrepreneurs. Because I hate it when I see a door open and then 6 months later I see a door closed just because they didn't get traffic or they don't know how to market it, whatever. Social media, I'm going to say, if you're a beer lover, spread this video when we release it on our YouTube page, RMK Productions and Network. Spread it to someone that loves a good conversation and a cold one. And especially if you're making root beer, since I don't drink, you can make root beer for me. I'll sit there and sip on root beer, but I'd love to tell your story. I'd love to sit there with my brother CB and tell your story and give you some love. I hope you realize that we're talking to you. So, Kurt, we have covered a lot of information, but I also want to ask you a question because we've talked about this. I want you to share the three things that you've learned about following your dreams. I know I said at the top of the show, how to achieve, and this is what we titled the show, is how to achieve your wildest dreams now. But you have some secrets on how to achieve your dreams and follow your dreams. Will you mind sharing that with us?
I'm happy to do that. So the first one is to recognize when that amazing idea pops up. It could be when you're just walking down the street and you look at something. It could be it came up in the middle of the night and you keep feeling it come back, so you just wrote it down. It could be you're thinking, I'm tired of my 9 to 5 job and I want to get out, and suddenly it pops up. So it is this urge that you have inside of you, and you need to listen to that inner voice that says, hey, you need to spend some attention. And that's largely how the app sort of started in the first place. And then you just go from there and figure out how does technology work and everything else related to it. Um, the second one I think that's very important is to listen intently. There's oftentimes people are too busy wanting to tell you about how amazing they are and what else they can do. Whereas if you're a really good listener and you ask insightful questions, much like you do, Kevin, that draws it out of your people, there are nuggets every day that you get that will help you down that path toward whatever it is that you intend to be, whether that is running a nonprofit, whether that's a for-profit business, whether that's making a difference in the community, whether that's doing something, helping your family, or being a baseball coach, whatever that happens to be, that listening skill is critical because it will save yourself a lot of agony along the way. And then the last one I think is you need to have some good role models around you. You need to have people who model the success that you aspire to, whether they are in the exact same space with you, whether they're in a different space with you, whether they are a mentor for you, whether you're a mentor for them. It's that symbiotic relationship and that growing that network, because there's a point in time when you get to be OGs like Kevin and I are, where we can reach back into our network and we can find folks to connect people to, but we want to connect them to the folks that we know are going to be good and that it's going to be a useful conversation for them, and that having that role model, and it can be male role model, female role model, it can be a person of color or a majority person, but you will find folks that come through your sphere of influence, that you want to just get to know more.
Yeah, and it's surprising is that most people think that when you achieve a certain level of improvement in quality of life and success, and however you define your success, they think that successful people are unapproachable. Most of the successful people, such as yourself, want to have conversations with inspiring entrepreneurs, young business men, students that are looking at life not through rose-colored eyes, but eyes wide open. So don't be afraid to share, and don't be afraid to ask. And that's the biggest thing. And how I got superstar Curtis on here. It took me 2 days to figure out how to ask him. I just said, "Come on my damn show," and he said yes. He said yes. And I always say that you're only as strong as your last no. And so
Yeah.
so far, yes, it's been good for me. So CB, what's next for you?
So a couple things. I always am looking for what is another opportunity. And so I have done a lot of work in real estate in the past. So I'm looking at a new opportunity where we basically connect folks that say had a house they've bought, they want to flip with a person on the other side that could be an investor, could be a hedge fund that is gathering those kinds of assets.
Assets.
And then we will help serve as I don't know if I would call it rainmaker, but we'll be the intermediary that helps put those folks together. And for that, we earn a small return on our money. But you build it up, and because real estate, unlike the stock market, which is only 2 to 5%, and you have no idea who's doing what with your money, real estate is one of the best asset classes to be in. It has tax advantages. There's the ability to find great opportunities in there, whether you have a little money to invest or you have a bigger money to invest, whether it's your own first home or you're doing things where you are buying and renting those out. So I'm trying to figure out how that might fit into this overall portfolio. And it's the people that I come across. Uh, the other piece I will leave this with you is about social media. So I am not a huge social media person, but I both look at our Instagram feed, I look at what my Facebook might be, but I also looked at LinkedIn. Now, a lot of the brewers may not be the kind of folks that spend a lot of time in LinkedIn because they're not corporate, but a lot of the people who are adjacent to me. So somebody who does operations consulting, I do marketing, I do branding, I reach out to them. I say, hey, is there something we can do together? Is there things you know? I have this idea. Can you tell me what you think would make some sense? Um, the other piece that we're figuring out right now is there are our first founding brewers. We're looking to figure out who are the first 50, 25 to 50, that we're going to give a special value to. Some free advertising, promotion through social media, the ability to be recognized in the app and in their communities. So it's always about trying to think of what is the next best thing to keep moving the product and keep reinvigorating it and making it better. If you only get there and you put everything in, and then in 3 weeks after you put it in, it's changed, which is exactly what happens, could be 2 hours. What is the difference? What do my customers want? And I always ask them. I ask both the brewers what they're thinking about, and I ask the customers by being at craft beer festivals and being out there and showing what the app can do. So those are 2 or 3 things that I have in mind as we're going down the road.
And for those entrepreneurs out there, be it well established or entrepreneurs that are just in business for the first 30 days, I would say shame on you if you don't reach out to Mr. Curtis Battles and say, how can I connect with you? How can I create a conversation with you? Invite Curtis to your shop and have a beer and have a pleasant conversation and talk about the future of your beer and see if you can create I what most people say, I hate this word, synergy.
Yeah,
Create a connection,
yep.
create a connection to where it can take you to the next level. It can take you to the next door. It can give you emotional freedom of not having your life connected to someone else's dream. And if you have the power to dream, you have the power to achieve. And with Curtis itself. So CB, I want to thank you. And to all of our people that have been listening, I hope you reach out to them. And remember, I said I love beer. And Kurt, we're going to have to talk about, because I'm in the position now for both my podcasts and the 10 United, because we're expanding in the fall. We will be teaching how to podcast to 10 students at Cheney University and 2 other historically Black colleges. And we're going to need sponsors. So since you got connections with Pepsi and so forth, whatever, I need to talk to you to see how about approaching them. But I just want to thank you. I want to thank you. I asked 90% of the people that come on the show, if they had one ask, ASK, mean one dream to come true, what would that be? Now, before you answer, I want you to understand this. I always tell people at the end of this show is that the people that subscribe and follow, Talking with Kevin and Son, my friends, all have a very high call to action. It means that they don't drive by an accident, they stop to help. So if you're one of those people that want to get involved, that want to help, that want to teach, coach, or maybe even sponsor a podcast like this or the 10 United podcast, then go ahead and subscribe and follow. If you like what you've heard on here, I ask you to share, especially we have to share this. But before Curt answers this question, I want to let you know that since we've done this, I've had 5 people that have been guests on this show that have had 5 strangers, well, actually 3 strangers, grant them their life's dream. And some of us live our whole entire life without having one dream come true. And I've got 5 people that will confess that their dreams came true through a connection and their story on this show. So, Curt, I want you to sit back and I want you to think long and hard. If you had one ask and it can come true, and someone in our audience could help you and help that dream come true, what would your ask be? ASK.
Well, Kevin, I think the ask I have is really helping build this brewery adventure tour into this amazing juggernaut that really just sweeps the country and gets people all excited and becomes the go-to app that people will find out there. So the thing that would be most helpful for folks in your audience is for them to go to the App Store on Android or on Apple to download the app and to actually sign up for an account. So there's the ability, if you sign up, you can save all your information and save all your breweries you're going to and save all your tours. And that will make a huge difference for us because we are trying to grow our audience, just as you are doing with your podcast. When we get over a certain level, it suddenly will explode. I can feel it right down the road. And I think because it's so much fun, people will really get a kick out of it and come back and tell us new ideas that we haven't even thought about how to enhance their experience, whether we promote and do brewery tours in different places. We do one for the African American brewers in the DC area or whatever may come from that. I don't know what that will be, but I would say it seems simple, but it's the crowd share approach of folks there. Entrepreneurs always are begging for money. So there's not much point in begging for money because that is not necessarily what I'm looking for, even though it would be great. But I think that this is going to be an amazing, amazing success. And that's what you have to have in your head, that this is going to succeed, going to do what it takes to do for it to succeed. So I hope that makes sense to your audience and to you.
It made sense to me. I can't wait to see the feedback. And I know people have a very high call to action, want to get involved. And I can't wait to have you co-host with this. And you can educate me on the different variations of handcrafted beer, and we can give some people some love. Like I said, come on the show. So with that said, I want to tell all of our listeners, we appreciate all of our loyal friends and listeners. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode and me showcasing another person that you should know. And if you like the story that we've had, I would ask you to go to RMK Productions and Network and watch the entire interview, share it. And if you really like it, go ahead and become a subscriber so you can get notification every time we have something coming in. I've always said that struggle is a never ending process. Freedom is never really won, it's earned. And the way it's a win, if each generation comes after us, celebrates our win. I always say find 1,000 reasons to be kind to someone. That is my hashtag. My grandfather always said, when you get to a point in life where you can help someone else out, it is your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And again, Curtis, you are always welcome back. No matter what you want to talk about, you can come back and co-host the show with me. My son is absent because he is a chef, and we record on the days that he's not working, but he's always welcome back, and he will be back. And like I said, my grandfather said, when you get to a point to help someone, it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, we'll fade to black. Thank you, Mr. Curt Battles.
Thank you, Kevin. Really enjoyed it.